Usually, the travel that I undertake has more to do with what I'm writing, and consequently, because I'm very much a writer who believes in, yes, doing the book research at home, but there's no substitute for actually tramping around streets and experiencing the city on foot. And I always say to anyone who's planning to write a book, walk the city. Never have a professional researcher, because they will always filter the information. And you have to encounter the experience, not just the facts, but the feeling as well. It's a bit Robert De Niro, this kind of method acting theory of how to write a book, but it does work because you get ideas and you get feelings and you get sensations, and they go in a book. And I'll give you a very good example. I had to write about a place called Wewelsburg, which is a little castle in northern Westphalia in Germany that Himmler had bought. And he bought this place because he was planning to make it the center of the new SS state of Burgundy. And this was going to be the spiritual headquarters of the SS, this little castle. And then he took a whole load of Soviet POWs, about 800 people, and worked them to death to build a crypt in this castle, where along Arthurian lines, where sort of SS generals, when they died, would eventually, their ashes would be interred. So creepy concept. And I was planning to visit this place. I was in Amsterdam, and I rang up, and I said, "Have you got a?" Oh yeah, I forgot to mention it's now a youth hostel. Only the Germans could turn no. It's a youth hostel now. So I bought myself a little youth hosteling card, and I thought, well, that's all I need to get in this place. So I rang up, and I said, "Do you have a bed?" "No, we are completely full." So I thought, well, I've got to go anyway, because regardless of whether they're full or not, even if I have to sleep in the car. So I drove all the way there to this place. It was about four hours. And when I got there, it was Halloween. It was a dark and stormy night. Wind lashed the flagpole and rattled the lanyard on the flag. And I knocked at the door. And it was huge, heavy. It was like Dracula's castle, honestly. And I opened the door, and this Igor figure was standing there. "Yes." I held up my youth hostel card. I said, "I'd like a bed for the night, please. Walk this way." It was like that scene in Young Frankenstein, except that I didn't say, "Well, I don't know if I can," But I did indeed follow him down into the depths of this castle, and he walked me past one empty dormitory after another. The place was completely empty. And I got to the final dormitory, and he pointed to the bed nearest the corner and said, "This is your bed." And so, slightly unnerved, I thought, well, I better get some drink inside me pretty quickly if I'm going to stay here. So I said, "Is there a little Hof in the vicinity where I could get some dinner?" And, "Yes, there's a little Hof down the hill. You could try there." So I walked down the esplanade, and there was indeed a little Hof in this kind of Hansel and Gretel little village, which was full of little half-timbered houses. But the houses had creepy gold runes painted on them, like something from an M.R. James story, quite literally, which didn't sort of lend itself to me feeling comfortable there particularly. Anyway, I walked in the Hof, and it was like the scene in Frankenstein, when everybody goes silent as you walk in the door and look at you. Well, I sat down. The waitress handed me a menu, and I ordered. And then I looked down at the side of my seat, and it was beautifully carved oak. And on the side was a skull and crossbones, a death's head. And then I thought, well, it's nicely carved. Perhaps they just didn't want to vandalise it, If they'd been Greeks, of course, they would have done. And then I looked up at the ceiling, and it was the double lightning SS flash carved again beautifully on the ceiling. And so I had a very good dinner, and I went to the men's room, and I walked down this long corridor on these bits of brown paper sort of taped to the wall. And I thought, well, I've got to see behind one of these bits of brown paper. So I tugged one off, and they were all men in SS uniform. And they were all young men, and more disturbingly yet, they were all recent photographs. And it was my little John Voight Odessophile moment, because I suddenly realised I was in what was probably the spot where fascists and Nazis continue to congregate in Germany, albeit a very small number of people, but nonetheless slightly disturbing. More disturbing was the discovery that I couldn't actually get the brown paper back on over the picture, and I sort of get thinking, perhaps I ought to get out of here as soon as possible now. Well, I went back to the castle and endured a very uncomfortable night, and got up early and had a good sneak around in the small hours. But that's the kind of thing you do in order to find truth, as it were, in order to sort of experience the stuff you've actually been writing about, and a lot of that went into the book. And I, as I say, I firmly believe this is the best way to do it. I mean, I do take it to sort of slightly absurd lengths, and I know it's absurd, but and if it makes me seem like a sort of geek, then so be it. What do I do to keep Bernie interesting?
Personally, not
to me,
the reader.
Yeah, to me. Oh, yeah, to me personally. Yeah, I mean that's a very good question, and I guess really I look for the story first. That's going to be an interesting thing, because without the story, I can't see him being interesting. So if I can find an interesting scenario for him in which to work, then that's where I get inspired. I couldn't just sort of like force myself to write another one just for the sake of it. I have to wait for the history to sort of lead me by the hand. I can't just, impose my will, as it were, because I need something. I need, a little bit of inspiration, really.